Welcome. We're very excited to have you join us today as we launch the Technical Advisory Group for Washington State Ferries Fauntleroy Terminal Trestle and Transfer Span Replacement Project. We know that your time is limited and we so appreciate you spending some of your time here with us today. My name is Liz Faulkner. I am part of the Communications and Outreach team, and I'll be facilitating our discussion today. While we've been doing virtual meetings for many months now, many of us are still from home, and we ask for and appreciate your patience in advance. The last reminder you probably just heard a moment ago, this meeting is being recorded, and the video will be provided and available to all of you and a few of our members today who weren't able to attend. And so now I'd like to go ahead and just do some Zoom control overview. Folks, you please can remain on mute, and while you're in the participant mode until we get to the more interactive part of our agenda, the default mode is in fact to have you on mute and without video. When we transition into some of our discussion and introductions, you'll have the chance to both rename yourself as well as unmute and share video. I'd also like to just point out that there'll be a few parts of our agenda today where we'll be taking some questions and comments. And so we're leaving the chat open as you've seen. If you have technical questions, you can send a direct message to John Doyle Tech Support. And throughout the time, we'll have a chance when we'll use the raise hand function at the end as well. Okay, so with that, I'd like to do a brief introduction of our project team members here today. And then we'll go ahead and move into a presentation to ensure that everyone has a shared understanding of the project and community engagement. And then we'll have the chance for all of you to share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself. Finally, we'll all be in space together. We'll be able to see each other and have a discussion about the purpose and the role of the tag. If we're on time, we should have just a few minutes at the end to take some final questions. Without that, I just want to add that during the advisory group process here, you'll be seeing a number of core project team members and technical subject matter experts from Washington State Ferries and the consultant team. In today's meeting, we have joining in a speaking role, Dave Sowers, the Director of Terminal Engineering for Washington State Ferries, Alec Williamson, Washington State Ferries Terminal Design Engineering Manager, and finally, Hadley Rodero, Washington State Ferries Communications and Community Engagement Manager for the project. We also have a few other terrific team members who are joining here now as panelists, and I'll ask to just give a quick wave hello while I introduce them. Charlie Torres, the project manager for Washington State Ferries, Marcia Tolan, part of Washington State Ferries Environmental and Sustainability Group, Philip Narty, Washington State Ferries Tribal Liaison. We've got Trevor Sharp and Leonard Smith listening in from our operations group. And finally, I believe Doug Plater on the line with Jacobs Engineering. And Dave, before we get going here, just a brief word from you, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that introduction. And I want to thank you all for participating today. We got a good turnout, and that's obviously an important part of these things, is making sure that we have active and strong participation. So thank you all. I want to thank you also on behalf of Patty Rubstella, who's our Washington State Ferries Director. She couldn't be here, but she sends her thanks for participating. You all share unique perspectives and represent your organizations very well, and that's why you were selected to be here. We're hoping that you can learn a little bit about this important project for us. This is one of our heaviest routes in all of the system, and an important part of the communities that serve Vashon and the peninsula. So lots of different perspectives are going to come up in the course of this, of our conversation. And I also wanted to highlight that we do have two other advisory groups. One's a community advisory group, and we also have an elected leadership group. So there are other groups, but this is the best and funnest group because you guys will all be talking the technical stuff. The engineers can pretend they're engineers no longer. They can really roll up their sleeves and get their slide rules out. So we're excited about your participation here. We've obviously, as you know, have come to the conclusion on our big Mukilteo project. We have a project in Seattle that's going to come to a close late next year. So we've got a lot of other big trestle projects that are going on, and this is kind of that next one in the queue, and we're really excited about it. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Alec.
Yeah, and before you get started, Alec, just a recap of what today's meeting goals are. In our about 70 minutes remaining, we hope to do a meet and greet and get a chance for all of the participants in our technical advisory group member to meet and learn a bit about each other. Our goal also is to provide a baseline understanding of the project and level the playing field on what people know about why the project is needed and important. We also want to have a chance for members to understand how the technical advisory group will be engaged throughout the planning phase. And finally, work through some details about the tag's purpose and roles. And now, Alec, over to you to share some background.
Great, thank you, Liz. So who does the terminal serve? The Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal in West Seattle supports the Triangle Ferry route with daily service between West Seattle, Fauntleroy, Southworth, and Vashon Island. The Triangle route is part of State Route 160 and is served on the east side by Fauntleroy Way, which is a City of Seattle managed street. The Triangle includes 3 vessels serving 3 destinations, all with different crossing times. And the terminal serves as a critical transportation and economic hub for the region and served more than 3 million riders per year in 2019, including people who board ferries by walking, biking, driving, and riding transit. So there are many challenges at this location. It's one of our oldest facilities in the ferry's inventory. So first off, structural and seismic challenges. Today's terminal sits atop timber piles installed back in 1957 and 1984. So it's no surprise the facility is showing its age. Many parts of the facility shown on this graphic are vulnerable to earthquakes and or due for replacement given their age. Our crews conduct regular inspections and in recent years have needed to replace individual piles from time to time to keep the facility safe and operational. Another problem facing the current terminal is rising sea level. Expected rising sea level and increasing frequency and intensity of storms over the design life of the future facility means damage to the dock from debris during high tides is an increasing risk if we don't act.
I'm just going to come off mute for a second and just clarify here for our members. Right now you're in viewer mode, so you're watching a presentation and you're not able to change your video or your name or audio. When we get to the part of introducing members and talking together, we'll all be in space where you can do that. So hopefully right now what you can do is see the presentation and hear Alec and then Hadley share some words. If you're having tech issues, please send a direct message via the chat to John Doyle Tech Support. Back to you, Alec.
Okay, thanks, Liz. So operational challenges are also really big here at Fauntleroy. In addition to structural and environmental challenges, as many of you are more familiar, there are longstanding operational challenges here at Fauntleroy Terminal, including 1, vehicle queuing on Fauntleroy Way with only 1 shoulder holding lane to serve 2 destinations, and 2, a small terminal with only enough dock space for approximately 80 cars, although the terminal is served by 3 Issaquah class ferries that each hold 124 cars. So it's a very constrained site. So replacing the Fauntleroy terminal was one of many recommended actions included in the Washington State Ferries 2040 long-range plan. Others shown here relate to vessels, preservation improvements at the other terminals in the route, and installing shore charging capability to serve hybrid electric ferries in the future. So the project timeline, as many of you know, the project we're talking about today follows nearly 3 years of work with communities between fall 2016 and spring 2019 to develop and implement near-term operational improvements. In 2017, ferries made minor operational improvements at the terminal to streamline vehicle processing. And then in 2019, early 2019, WSF launched a new sailing schedule for the Fauntleroy-Vashon Southworth route. Earlier this spring, 2021, we started the planning phase for this project. Our work together will inform the level and timeline for environmental review, which will then be followed up with design and ultimately construction. So the PEL planning and environmental linkages phase, which we're in right now, which we're just kicking off right now, we're doing in partnership with the Federal Highway Administration. Planning and environmental linkages, or PEL, studies encourage early involvement with the public, tribes, jurisdictions, and regulatory agencies to be more effective in helping us identify transportation issues, environmental concerns, community values, and economic goals in project planning. PEL studies aim to expedite project schedules by identifying and reducing the number of alternatives to be advanced for more detailed environmental study and engineering design. So here's a graphic of our timeline process for PEL. The key steps for this planning phase include first gathering input and identifying project needs, next developing and screening potential alternatives or ways to address the project needs. This starts first with a fatal flaw screening of alternatives using the draft purpose and need statement as a guide. This is followed by additional screening and refinement of alternatives that pass through the fatal flaw screening. Finally, developing a study report that summarizes which alternative or alternatives should move forward into the environmental review phase, and other recommendations about project implementation approach and the path forward. As you can see, throughout this project, there are meaningful opportunities for input and collaboration by the community, tribes, and advisory groups, including you. And now I'll turn it over to Hadley Rodero to share more about community engagement during the PEL process.
Thanks, Alec. So as you can see on this graphic, there'll be feedback from many audiences that will feed into the planning phase as we develop this PEL study report. And one of the audiences is you. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the technical advisory group. And as Dave mentioned, we'll also be convening a community advisory group that meets for the first time tomorrow night, and then an executive advisory group, which has its first meeting a month from today, that includes executives from many of your agencies. They'll be meeting in all three groups. They'll be sort of weighing in and providing us advice as we move forward. But then just as important, we'll be conducting broad public outreach and talking to ferry customers and tribes and working with our ferry advisory committees that work with us on a daily basis on many other ridership issues and service issues. So it's all going to feed into the report as we go along. Our goals for the community engagement process include being really transparent. We know that this is a challenging site. And we're going to be transparent about the complexities of the project and how community input is used to define the alternatives. And we'll be working with communities and agencies to define the core problems faced by ferry riders, as well as balancing the needs of the nearby neighbors in the West Seattle there by the terminal, providing opportunities for the public to shape the project and really inform our decision-making, and proactively seeking to include historically underrepresented and underserved populations on both sides of the route, and engaging the public through virtual tools like we are today, and then also other tools until it's safe to gather in person, but also even after that, especially because of the unique nature of this route being a triangle. We want to make sure that all three communities and agencies, jurisdictions on all corners of the route have a chance to be engaged and can easily weigh in, and that everybody can hear from each other without needing to travel or come to another community for a meeting. So that's going to be a key part of this. And we're kind of lucky that COVID accelerated that and everyone's comfortable with this kind of meeting right now. And we can use that to our advantage for this project. We also want to seek to balance all three communities' perspectives and really aim for what we like to call informed consent, which are probably familiar with that term, that it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody agrees with the final alternative, but you're informed about the reasons for it and balancing all the needs and perspectives. So we'll be using a number of tools to do this. We'll be outreaching to stakeholders via briefings and presentations, and convening these advisory groups that you're one of, hosting online meetings, and then potentially at some point in the future, in-person meetings again, sharing information through our website, social media, and other outlets, partnering with community and social service organizations to help reach typically historically underserved communities. And these are tools that we'd love your feedback on as we move forward, and your advice, and also to use your individual tools and channels at your agencies to help amplify the message of this project. So any ideas you have, that's definitely, we'll talk about that later in the meeting, one of your roles and what we're hoping for from this group. So when you tie it all together, this really becomes a cross-community, cross-agency dialogue that will help us define the right project to address the needs. And it becomes an iterative process with input coming into us. We'll share the feedback, we'll have discussion in these meetings in this group, and then use that input to consider it and then make a final decision. And we'll be coming back, especially to this group because of your role as our technical advisors. We'll be coming back several times in an iterative loop to sort of share what we heard from the public and our community advisory group, and then discuss with you as we elevate things to our executives, and then make a decision on how we move forward. We'll be sharing info, allowing lots of time for discussion at key milestones, and considering what we hear, and then looping back again if needed to share how the information was used. So we're hoping it's going to be a really engaging 2-year process with lots of voices weighing in on the project, and hoping that you're ready for that journey. So in that note, I'll turn it back to Liz.
Thanks, Hadley. Before we move into the introductions by all of the members here today, I just want to offer the opportunity, if there are some clarifying questions you have about the project, to enter them into the chat now, and we can take just a few questions before we move to our next agenda item. So I'll give you about a minute to think about if there's a question that comes up, and if not, we'll move on to the next section of the agenda. Okay, I see a question here in the chat from Jessica. Will you be extending the existing footprint of the terminal? Alec, do you want to take a stab at that question?
Sure thing. So yeah, the decision making with regard to the shape, size, function, even location of the terminal are all TBD. Those are decisions that we are going to explore all of the input that comes in, just like what's showing on this graphic here. And right now we're really not at that stage to make that kind of a decision. We're really more in the collecting information stage of the process, and then developing the we're moving into that phase where we're developing the purpose and need for the project, and that purpose and need statement will guide us. Yeah, it's really too early to answer that question.
Alec, thanks for that. The next one here in the chat is from Jerry, and the question is, will slides be made available to attendees and rosters for the other groups eventually? And Hadley, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Hi, Jerry. So yes, the slides will be made available for this meeting, and we'll also be sharing out the video of the meeting. So we're recording this whole thing, so the discussion and dialogue will go along with it. And then we can certainly share the rosters for the other groups. We're meeting with our community advisory group for the first time tomorrow night. We had 64 applicants for that group and selected 24 people. And they're meeting for the first time. And as part of that first meeting, we're going to discuss with them their comfort level with having their names posted on our project website and who they're representing, their various groups that they're representing. So once that happens, I'm hoping to post the roster for the community advisory group online. And then we will share, as part of our meeting notes for this meeting, I'll share the list of the executive advisory group that's going to meet for the first time in July.
Hadley, thank you. One last question in here from Sandra. What agency is the federal lead for the project changes? Alec, back to you.
Sure, that's an easy one. It's Federal Highway Administration.
Okay, we have time for just about one more question before we move on. There's an oh good in the chat. Anything else from members at this time? Okay. And so with that, we're going to move to the section of the agenda where we do member introductions. And again, this is a big goal of our orientation meeting number 1 here together to really get to know each other. And we have a few prompts that we'd like you to use in introducing yourself. Your name and what agency you represent, and then some thoughts on these 2 prompts. How does the work and or interests of your agency align with this project? And second, what do you consider the biggest challenge for this project? So we'd like members to keep their introductions to 30 to 45 seconds. And what we'll be doing is entering each of you into panelists, and I'll be putting a list in the chat of the order we'll be using today for introductions. So the first few introductions will be made by Ben Smith, Laura, and Stephanie. So Ben, we're going to start here with you in just a second.
All right, I think I got it going. Yes, okay. Hi, the first one here. Hi, good afternoon. So I'm Ben Smith with the Seattle Department of Transportation. I would say, lost the prompts right there. I would say, we're very interested in this project just because anyone exiting or coming to the terminal from that mainland side is using our roadways or using our partnership with other providers like King County Metro. So we definitely want to make sure it works for the ferry users on the land side. And then I'd say the biggest challenge for this project is just how do y'all and we develop a 21st century facility with all the needs that we know are there and all the constraints that we know we're going to find. So yeah, thanks. Glad to be part of this work.
And just, yep, thank you for going back on mute. The next person here is Laura.
Hi, Laura Arbor with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. Suppose I could start my video. There we go. I'm in the dark, sorry. This work aligns with our interests because of course the work requires hydraulic project approval from our agency underneath the hydraulic code and in the interest of protecting fish life and fish habitat. And the biggest challenge, I think that's yet to be determined. I assisted with Coleman Dock and Mukilteo, and so we'll see what comes up with this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Next, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Lilly. I'm with Kitsap Transit. Well, as you know, we're into the fast ferry world and we're operate out of Southworth. So just how this impacts that operation and what we can do to support the changes. As far as challenges, any overwater project is a challenge. So yeah, that's the best I can say on that. But it's great to be here and great to meet all of you.
Thanks, Stephanie. The next three, Jerry, Rima, and Jessica. Jerry, you're up.
Hi, so I'm Jerry Poor from the Port of Seattle, experiencing some technical difficulties, but our interest at the port is a little indirect. We're also a public agency in the maritime industry, and we share, as you describe your larger sphere of influence, we share access roads and stakeholders in the Duwamish Valley. I would say the biggest challenge is funding in my perspective.
Thanks, Jerry. Next, over to you, Rima.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rima Griffith. I'm the Executive Director with the Washington State Transportation Commission. Our interests are probably more indirect as well, as the body who sets fares and fare policies for the ferry system. We're very interested in the capital infrastructure that occurs to support improved ferry operations and give a better value to our riders of the ferry system. So we're very interested to see how this proceeds from that perspective, as well as from the funding standpoint. I think probably from our perspective, the biggest challenge, in addition to just getting it funded, will be to really make sure that the expansion and improvements can be addressed in such a small footprint, considering the constraints being faced by the current location.
Thanks, Rima. Jessica, over to you. Jessica, are you having challenges or do you want to go ahead?
Sorry, I was still muted.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I am one of the lane managers for DNR, and we are directed by statute to ensure a balance of public benefits, including commerce and navigation. And so I think one of the challenges is just to make sure that we're also looking at the environmental impacts of any changes, especially if there's any expansion of overwater structures on state-owned aquatic lands. So
Thanks very much.
yeah, thank you.
We're moving now. The next batch is Carl with a K, Z, Edward C, and David G. Carl with a K, can you come up?
Good afternoon, Carl Zimmer with King County in the wastewater treatment division. I guess our interest, or my interest, is that one of my work groups operates and maintains the Barton Street pump station adjacent to the terminal, and so we have folks that are in and out of that facility on a regular basis.
Welcome, Carl. Next, Edward, over to you.
Yeah, Edward Coviello with Kitsap Transit, and I mostly have the same concerns that my colleague Stephanie shared about fast ferry timing over at South Worth, and probably schedule changes that are going to be needed ferry on this project. That also affects bus routes that connect to both our fast ferries and also to the state ferries in South Worth. So it's more of an operational flexibility challenge from our perspective. I'm not sure what the biggest challenge would be for the project. It's pretty complex. See how it goes. I think it's going to work out well.
Thank you, Edward. Next, David, can you share your introduction?
Hi all, David Graves, Seattle Parks and Recreation. We're adjacent property owners, Lincoln Park, and we own some other properties in the area. So we see some spillover impacts from ferry riders, but also having being a public agency and shoreline property owner, we're kind of sympathetic to the challenges that ferries are going through in their permitting and their work, and are excited to see the project moving forward because ferry riders are also park visitors. So it's a benefit for us as well. I would imagine the biggest challenge to the project, besides the permitting piece, is probably dollars.
Thanks, David. The next batch here, we're going to hear from Sharon, Ella, and Chris. Sharon, over to you. We'll pause. Let's move on, Ella, to you, and Sharon will come back to you. Ella, over to you for an introduction.
Thanks. My name is Ella Williams. I'm with King County Metro. We operate, one of our rapid rides connects with the Fauntleroy terminal. We also have a couple of routes that operate on the ferry during pre-COVID times. So just thinking about construction and long-term impacts to whatever the new configuration looks like. And I think for us, one of the challenges is making sure that that connection between walk-on riders for the ferry and transit is as seamless as possible.
Ella, thank you very much. Chris with a CM.
Hi, I'm Chris Mack. I'm with King County Wastewater Treatment Division. And I think this project, well, I'm concerned because of maintaining operational function at our Barton Street facility. And I think our biggest project challenge is going to be just all of the various people, agencies that have some operational interest that we have to balance.
Thank you, Chris. The next group of people will hear from Andrew, Charlie, and Allison. But Sharon, I'd like to come back and see if you're.
I'm here. Yes,
Hi.
I'm sorry. It made me like actually re-enter the meeting to become a presenter.
Sorry about that. Welcome, Sharon. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sharon Love, and I'm with the Federal Highway Administration. I'm the Environmental Program Manager in our division office in Olympia. We are the federal lead agency, so we are responsible for the NEPA document, and that is because there will be federal funding, I believe, or the possibility of federal funding. So I think this is exciting for us because we're trying this Pell process, and so I think the challenges have been well addressed, but that's something we're really excited about, seeing how this process works.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Andrew, we're going over to you next.
Hi, Andrew Gibb with Seattle City Light. We are excited about the idea of providing whatever service needs come out of this, especially with the idea of electrifying ferries. That aligns very well with our interests and with the city of Seattle as a city department with climate improvements that can be made. I think at the same time, there will be challenges in getting power to a relatively residential area far flung from some of our large substations. So look forward to figuring out how to do that.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Charlie K, we're over to you next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me into the group, and I'm impressed. I will work diligently to keep up with the esteemed colleagues I've heard from so far. I'm the fire chief on Vashon Island, so I don't know that I have specific engagements in the work or the goals of this redesign other than impacting the design. Obviously, this facility is a critical component of our emergency services, specifically people who are ill and need to be taken to a hospital. Regarding biggest challenges, I think with Cascadia Rising 22 coming up, I'm concerned on us building this facility to take a good shake and a little bit of a tsunami, as I understand, in that part of the world. So those are my goals, and I hope to bring value to the team. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much for being here. Next in this batch, we'll hear from Allison O'Sullivan. Okay, in the next group here, we'll listen to introductions from Sandra, Jennifer, and Stephanie. Let's go ahead and get you moved over in just a second here. Sandra, are you there? Okay. I want to give Allison one last chance. Allison, are you able to share your introduction?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I was talking, you guys just couldn't hear me.
Okay.
And
Well,
I'm
give it
not
again.
turning on my video because I am in the car, so it would be a little awkward. But I'm the senior biologist with the Suquamish tribe. The Suquamish tribe takes an active interest in any land use proposals that occur within their usual and accustomed fishing area, which this project does occur in that area. And our concerns are any impacts from the project itself or construction that would impact tribal treaty fishing and or resources. So, and the biggest challenge for the project, well, funding is always a big challenge for any project, I think.
Thank you for sharing en route nonetheless. Sandra, I'll give you another chance. Are you on the line? Okay, let's move on. Jennifer, are you able to share?
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes, if you could hear me. Hi, my name is Jennifer. I work with the Army Corps of Engineers. Sandy may actually be having some issue connecting with audio, but she and I work together to work on the permit decisions for the Army Corps of Engineers regarding this project. So we would be working on actually looking at all the impacts and having that work under the regulations. So I think that the biggest challenge for this project would be to capture all of those, what impacts, aquatic impacts would actually be involved in this project and potential changes in the future to the permit and whatnot.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for doing a joint introduction for you and Sandra. Stephanie, if you're able to use audio and video, can you share your update?
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Jackson, actually with WSDOT ESO. I'm substituting for Penny Kelly today, who works for the Department of Ecology for 401 issues. So I'm going to assume kind of what her concerns would be. It would piggyback with Jen's concerns regarding impacts, potentially design changes as we go along, because we tend to permit prior to design being final, and just really clarifying what water quality protection measures will be put in place during the work. Those are the main concerns. So, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have just a few final folks here. Joseph Martek. Joseph, can you share a bit about who you are?
Sure. It just made me restart and rejoin there. Yes. I'm Joseph Martek. I'm with Seattle City Light. How this aligns with our group is we're interested in any kind of electrification and green initiatives. And the biggest challenging to make sure that we have infrastructure in place out there to support the new load when it comes online.
Great, thank you very much. I know we also have two other folks here joining from the Transportation Commission, Aaron and Carl. And if there's anyone else I missed, if you would please let me know, let the group know who you are and share a bit about yourself.
Hey, am I up?
There you are.
Okay, I got booted off and then rejoined. So Aaron Halbert with the Transportation Commission. So I'm just going to kind of echo what Rima had said. Our interests are in, the ferry fare setting aspect of it, the rider outlook of it, looking at satisfaction with the routes, with the facilities and everything. And then, echo again the funding challenges associated with the project as well.
Thanks, Erin.
I think, can you all hear
Yeah,
me? This is Sandra
we can.
Oh, yay. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry for my technical difficulties. Thank you, Liz, for guiding me through it. So Jen did an awesome job of introducing the course. So thank you, Jen, for that. The only things I would add is that, first of all, thank you for this great early coordination, because I think it's super important to have these big projects come out super early, and this is a great group to be involved in. So I appreciate that. And then in addition, maybe the challenge, we're seeing a lot of ESA issues, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, those kind of things. And there's some changes in ESA mitigation that is new for us at the Corps that we're working through, and focus on benthic impact mitigation and working closely with tribal usual and custom interests that we will support and represent through our Corps permitting. So thank you for finally getting my voice out there. That's funny. I need to update my Zooms, I think.
Well, thanks everyone for your patience as we work through these technical fun times. Maybe that will be the biggest challenge for the project. I hope not, but thanks for your patience while we went through those introductions. And again, we wish we were in space together, and so we could see each other and look each other in the eye and get to know who we'll be working with over the next couple of years. But again, thank you for taking a minute to share a bit about yourself. Now we're going to transition to a bit more about the charter, so the purpose and the role of the technical advisory group, and then open it up for discussion as we close out our time here together. And so bear with me as I walk through just a few slides that are a little bit wordy. And again, you'll be provided this presentation and also the video recording after we meet, but want to make sure we have a chance to walk through our thinking on the purpose. So during the Pell process, as we've been describing the next 2 years, Pell, the Planning Environmental Linkages Study, we will be having a technical advisory group. And one of the things that Dave mentioned earlier is this is in addition to an executive advisory group and community advisory group. And there'll be some work together across these groups to both share input to the executive advisory group, as well as hear what are the top issues here for you all in this group, as well as for community members. During the Pell process, we are really looking for your collaboration with us, with the WSF team, through sharing technical input, ideas, and information in areas such as the existing conditions, the purpose and need for the project, screening criteria, potential solutions and alternatives to address the future needs of the terminal, current or planned projects or plans that could inform or be affected by any actions at the terminal or changes to the route itself. I heard many of you talk about not just the terminal in your introductions, but also services within areas served by the Triangle route. We want to hear from you technical constraints or opportunities of potential solutions or alternatives, and start a conversation about preliminary impacts and mitigation. Again, the goal of our technical advisory group input is to help Washington State Ferries identify and reduce the number of alternatives to be advanced into environmental review. Essentially an early no surprises conversation with each other about what to consider as these projects get defined. Next, let's talk a bit about the role. And so the role for the technical advisory group members will be to review the agendas in future, should there be technical content or materials to review in advance, to participate in all meetings and discussions that may need to be via email or via small group meetings in between our formal advisory group sessions, to openly share input, ideas, and information in the meetings themselves so that we can be encouraging collaboration and efficient dialogue between agencies, avoiding the need for a lot of side meetings and side conversations. We're hoping you can flag issues or impacts that we should be considering in decision-making. We are hoping members can keep an open mind regarding others' input, ideas, and perspectives. Looking to you all to brief agency leadership to ensure that all agency participants have the information, conversation, background, and status that they need to fully participate. And finally, at the close of the Pell process, as Alec mentioned earlier, there's the Pell study report. And so we'll be looking for your input both during meetings and also in writing during that report review process, so that we can make sure that that's considered as we look to what carries forward into the environmental review process. The role of the Washington State Ferries team will be to provide information, will be to provide presentation materials and summaries, to share technical expertise and information that helps to inform the TAG dialogue and recommendations. This includes, as I mentioned earlier, having several subject matter experts present and then participate in the sessions as the topics and agendas make sense. It also means consulting with you, listening carefully and considering your input. We know your time is valuable, and as Hadley shared earlier, the intention of an iterative process, both with the community as well as the advisory groups, is absolutely the commitment for Washington State Ferries. We also hope that the WSF team will be providing regular updates in between meetings, and following our discussion here today, a work plan which should include tentative milestones for future meeting dates. And lastly, explain how your feedback and recommendations were considered in the Pell study report. My role as facilitator will be to serve as an impartial person to help guide our process, including facilitating these meetings, try to keep our group focused and on time, set a protocol for each meeting. And the next one here is suggesting alternative methods. I think we'll have some tech lessons learned and suggestions moving into the next meeting. And my job here is really to encourage participation. So both in meeting design as well as in how we set up our discussions such that there's space for everyone to participate. Lastly, working with the WSF team to coordinate meeting logistics, to keep the communication line open. So that's email responses through the project inbox. Of course, ensure access and accommodations needs, whether it be translation or captioning services, and not to provide substantive input or opinions about recommendations or discussion topics. So that was a lot, as I promised. And before we move into just a few minutes for us to have some open discussion about feedback around what you've heard here today and the purpose and role of the TAG, we have just a couple of quick polls around advisory groups and Pell. So just a second here, and I've asked folks to participate as they see the poll come up. Okay, you all should see the poll here, which is asking whether or not you've participated in a technical advisory group. And the second question is whether or not your agency or organization has participated in a planning and environmental linkages poll process before. Give you just another minute here. Okay, it looks like I've heard from almost everyone. I'm going to end the polling here and share the results so you can see what we've got. Great. So it looks like for 2/3 or more of you, you've participated in a technical advisory group before. So welcome back. You know about what some of these are. And as Dave said, they're the most fun of the advisory groups. We get really down to the nitty-gritty and have a good time with each other. And for folks, it looks like there's a handful of people who this is their first time in an advisory group. So welcome. Let's make sure it's a good experience from all the alumni here. The second one was around whether or not your agency or organization has participated in Pell before. So we have, let's see, 7 people who have participated before. We have 4 people who have not, and a handful of people who aren't sure. And so maybe that's because others in their departments participate or not sure around the difference between Pell and the planning process. So thanks again for taking a second to fill out the poll. I'm going to stop sharing the results now, and then we'll move into a couple of discussion questions. And so at this point, we're going to open it up for the next 10 or so minutes to get some feedback from you on either if you have participated before an appel process, anything you've learned that you want to share with the good of the group, or specifically about the tag purpose and role. And the way we'll do this is if you would just raise your hand, then we can move you into being able to get back on video. And Sandra, for you joining by phone, if you've got an idea or question, feel free to jump in.
Liz, do you want to explain how people raise their hand for those that may not be familiar, including myself?
You know, that's a really good point, Dave. We actually have given everyone the ability to ask questions as promoting you to panelists so we can see one another. Let's start by, if you've got a question or comment, you can use the chat feature and we'll call on you. And then if you would share your camera and engage in the conversation. So again, first, any general feedback about your organization's past participation in the Pell or feedback about the tag purpose and role. That's the first question out there for any feedback.
Just wondering if you could stop the screen share so we could see each other if people turn their. Thank you.
Okay. I see a hand raised. Hadley?
Yeah, it's me. I was just, while you're thinking of the answer to the question Liz just asked, I'd be curious if there's anybody, now that you've heard the introductions from all our tag members, any organizations or agencies or people that you think are missing. We'd be happy to hear that. And our intention is to make this group somewhat fluid, try to keep core members, but if there's people you think should join from your own agencies or other agencies as we go along, please speak up. You know, now that you sort of heard who's in the room here and who's participating in some of the challenges and scope of this project, that'd be something I'm really curious to hear if we should be including others in the conversation.
I just want to note, John, tech support put a note here in the chat that now that we're not screen sharing, you can raise your hand down in the bottom bar. It's between the share screen and the pause stop live transcript buttons is a nice little stop sign to raise hand. And that's how you're able to raise hand to ask questions or provide feedback. Okay, Ben Smith, take it away.
Sure. So Esther, I'm not sure if we've done an appel process before. I certainly haven't before. So maybe at the next meeting, it doesn't have to take the whole meeting. It could even be on the side. Maybe a quick one-on-one about the appel process structure and how it's different from previous processes, just so I myself as a member of this group can help give good, appropriate feedback. You know, the timelines about what's expected to happen over the next 2 years versus what's not, I think will help the intention set for the entire process. That will be useful. Again, it doesn't have to take over the whole meeting. It can even be my own homework, but that would be useful as well, since it's my first time doing this sort of process. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Other questions or feedback about the overall Pell process or role before we move into a few other questions? Okay, a few other prompts for the group then. In thinking about the project background, presentation that Alec provided earlier, specific to why the project is needed. If folks can share feedback about which part of the purpose and need is of most interest to you, and I'll actually come back to a slide and show just a few options for you to respond to.
Liz, while we're going back, I just put in the chat a link to our project website, Ben and others, that does have a little bit more detail on Pell and some references, but we can talk about it at a future meeting too. But for those of you curious and want to read up on some background, there's some more definitions of Pell on that website.
Okay, so Alec in his presentation covered a few key areas of the purpose and need around the seismic and structural conditions of the facility, sea level rise, and some of the operational concerns. When we think about our next meeting together, thank you, Ben, for that ask around the Pell process. We also envision spending a good chunk of our time together next month on the purpose and need and providing additional information and technical input around some of the key areas. In looking at these top three, are there specific questions that come up from your agency that you hope that we cover in our next meeting? You can put them in the chat or raise your hand.
I'll add, since operations kind of captures a lot of, you may want to break that into transit operations, ferry operations, wastewater treatment operations. There's a lot of pieces there that people probably want to touch on all of that.
Okay, so I think I'm just taking a look to see if anyone else has questions or feedback. We'll probably transition now to our closing. And let's see, Sharon just put a note in the chat here around WashDOT's Pell website. Thank you, Sharon. So Ben, taking a look at this, as well as we'll make sure and cover that in our next meeting in July. Final moment here for any questions, and then we'll just close it up. Okay, so following our discussion here today, as Hadley mentioned at the beginning, we'll be sharing a summary as well as a recording of this meeting for all of you who participated, as well as those who couldn't participate today. We'll also be sending you along the version of the charter for the TAG, and that essentially captures the portion of the presentation today that covered the TAG's purpose and the roles, as well as upcoming work plan. So we'll be providing that to all of you to review and hopefully formalize at the beginning of our next meeting. At this point, we're anticipating the next meeting of the advisory group to be in late July, again with a focus on the purpose and need. So from here, we know what our next milestone is, and we'll share more at our next meeting about what to expect over the next several months. Again, it was really helpful to hear from all of you today about what you care about, what interests and perspectives you and your organization bring to this conversation and to this project being developed, and look forward to working with all of you in the future. With that, from the project team, any final words before we close today?
No, again, just to echo what Liz said, thank you for participating. It's such a great turnout from all different aspects and disciplines. So we're excited to launch this part of the project, and we'll all be learning a little bit about Pell along the way. So don't feel like you're coming to it for the first time and you're the only person. We're all learning it. So that's we appreciate we got FHWA here to help us and understand it even better. So thank you all.
Great. And we'll see you all in just over a month. Thanks very much. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your little extra time left on your agenda.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.